Good morning to everyone. Good morning. I hope that you have had a good morning and that the night air alert and explosions did not disturb you a lot, even though I understand this sounds weird. But we're very grateful to you that you found this opportunity to come to our event, to our presentation, Culture, Resilience, and Solidarity and Resilience, where we will present 4 projects of the project Creative Europe. My name is Diana Ignatenko. I am a manager on communications of Isolation Fund, and I am glad I have this honor to greet you here on behalf of the fund and also on behalf of the project Resilience Change. And on behalf of our partners, co-organizers of this event, civil organization, other education organization, Ukrainian Cultural Fund, and organization ELIA. As I announced, we will talk today a lot about these 4 projects, Creative Europe, and I see our colleagues joining us. We extend our greeting to them. We will also have a session from Olga Sagaidak, and we will also have a panel discussion in which we will discuss resilience in culture during war. And after that, we will have lunch. I hope it will be a very good lunch. After that, after lunch, I invite you, because I understand that the full day is quite difficult to endure, but say I call on you to remain till the end, because we will have workshop in the end of the day and then closing remarks and networking. And so I hope that we today have this luxury to meet offline and to have a very productive communication despite all the obstacles which you all had to overcome on your way here today. And despite all of that, we will be able to talk about culture in Ukraine and how it fits into the EU cultural environment. Now about a few some technical matters. I try to slow down, to speak slowly, but this is because we have in simultaneous interpretation English into Ukrainian and vice versa. And so if somebody here in this room who needs interpretation, please take your headset behind you and use them, because we will also have English speaking speakers. Besides, we have online streaming in YouTube, in Facebook, double language. So if somebody couldn't join offline, face to face, we know that many people voted to participate. Over 200 people wanted to participate, but unfortunately we don't have enough space to take in all the people. But we are glad that there are so many people who would like to participate, and we are now extending our greetings to everyone who watching us online on our stream. And no less important is safety. At Zero Flow, where the majority of you already have visited and treated yourself with coffee, we will have improvised shelter. And also we will track all air alerts, but we also ask all of you to keep track of the safety situation and to take individual decision. If there is an air alert and if you need to proceed to shelter, yes, please do so. We will also monitor the situation in case of this need. We also, even in more cozy atmosphere in the shelter, we will continue our presentation, or we might even go directly to networking. That was a joke. Okay, so now let's start our inspired event, and we will start from the welcoming remarks. And we had a pre-recorded video, because unfortunately this person didn't have the opportunity. The EU Commissioner on Youth, Culture and Sport, Glenn Mikalev, he pre-recorded his video address.
Dear Deputy Minister Movshovich, ladies and gentlemen, over the past 4 years, we have witnessed shocking images. Museum staff carrying paintings into basements, librarians moving rare books into shelters, and volunteers wrapping statues in sandbags. This is not done for exhibitions, but for protection. Russia's full-scale invasion is a war on identity. It is a war on values. And we see it in Russia's deliberate attacks on heritage sites, on museums, on churches, and on archives. UNESCO has now verified damage to over 500 Ukrainian cultural sites. And behind every number, behind every site, is a child who cannot step into a museum, a family that loses a place of prayer, a city that loses a piece of its soul, and an artist that is struggling to create, to engage with communities, and to simply continue. For Europe, this matters deeply, because Ukrainian culture is a crucial part of European culture. And culture connects people. It connects generations, it carries memory, and in this war on values, culture is Europe's first line of defense. Despite all odds, Ukrainian culture remains brave. It remains resilient, and it's alive. And so is its artistic community. The EU support for Ukraine, including for its artists and for its cultural professionals, remains steadfast. The 4 new projects being presented today are about people. This is 7 million euro in EU funding that we have mobilized under the second Creative Europe special call for Ukraine. This will enable Ukrainian artists and creatives to co-create with European partners and present their work and their resilience stories to new audiences. They will support displaced creatives and war veterans through culture. And they will offer mentoring, mobility, training, and internships, helping hundreds of Ukrainian artists and cultural professionals to strengthen their skills and to remain connected to their European peers. This is solidarity in practice, and it is a reminder that culture is at the heart of the European project. Since the beginning of this war, the European Union has provided more than 50 million euro to the Ukrainian cultural and creative sectors, including more than 20 million euro under the Creative Europe program. And when we invest in culture, we also invest in what binds us together. The special call offers Ukrainian artists and creatives a lifeline in their time of need. And I want to thank all organizations involved for responding to this important call and for standing up for Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Думаю, що цей виступ
I think that this appeal, this address, despite it was pre-recorded, it deserves applause, as is the support from the European Union. How many times? And we also invite Ms. Natalia to the floor, the Deputy Minister of Ukraine of Culture, on the aspects of European integration. Thank you for inviting. Thank you to Mr. Glenn for his inspiring speech. First of all, I would like to thank to the European Commission and to the program Creative Europe for the systematic support of the Ukrainian culture and creative industries. For Ukraine, culture is not on the side track of the state politics. The culture is recognized as the foundation of national security, and we all understand that within full-scale and conditions of full-scale invasion, this is our foundation for our resilience and safety. And that's why for us, for Ministry, integration into the cultural environment, European family is the strategic task, and it should be mentioned that the cooperation between Ukrainian artists and European partners has received a new turn in 2022 and became a foundation for consolidation and support. But we also need to understand that cooperation within the Creative Europe and international co-production not only showing Ukraine as a reliable partner to the world and not only opening to Ukrainian organizations and artists access to the funding, it also access to new audiences, markets, international cooperations. And international co-production is also a form of cultural diplomacy. And it is really important because this is a two-sided road. We exchange senses, traditions with other cultures, countries, and in this way we build ties, long-term cooperations. And so, on behalf of the Ministry of Culture, I greet the launch of new projects, initiatives, and this is not just presenting new projects. This is yet another step to strengthen cooperation between Ukraine and Europe in the strategic perspective. And I would like also to reiterate that this process is not only support for Ukraine, this process is also a multi-creation of cultural product, in which Ukraine is active subject, active participant, because it is its integral part. Thank you all, and I wish you a very inspiring, productive day, and really great launch of those initiatives. Thank you. Thank you. Next, with a presentation and opening remarks, I invite to the floor Ginis Pilayo, manager of the unit of the EU Education and Culture Executive Agency, and we will hear PowerPoint from him presentation. The floor is yours, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having us. I'm here from Brussels with my colleague Alejandro Ramiro, who oversaw the organization of the special call. After the words of our commissioner and the minister, we are going to dip a bit more deeper into what gathers us today, which is the special 2025 call in the cultural field under the Creative Europe Culture Program. To start with, just a little bit of a flashback. There is obviously no need to remember the sad anniversary that we were commiserating a couple of days ago of the Russian war of aggression. Just to stress that the European Union, as stressed eloquently by our commissioner, reacted as fast as it could in terms of Ukraine's application to become a candidate country, but also under the different program it manages. And this concerns also the specific cultural program of the European Union, the Creative Europe Culture Program, with very quickly a specific call in 2022, and another one last year in 2025. So just to remind very quickly the first call, it was launched at the end of 22. You see the three objectives that were pursued by the call, the promotion of Ukrainian culture and its circulation, addressing the social consequences of the war, including the very important dimension of mental health, and paving the way for the reconstruction already of the cultural sectors that have been affected by the war. The budget for this call was 5 million euro. A budget comparable, for instance, to our annual call on literary translation. So by our standards, a significant budget. and we have been selecting 3 projects matching the 3 objectives that I've just outlined. This call was followed a couple of years later by a second call for proposal dedicated to the Ukrainian cultural sector. Same budget, publication, as I said, 2 days, 2 years after the first one, and the objective was to select the 3 projects matching the objectives. What are these objectives? So the first one is to support Ukrainian artists and cultural organizations to co-create with their peers and showcase their arts and works. So a focus on creation, because it is at the heart, as the name indicates, of the Creative Europe program. So we always keep a focus on this aspect. The second objective and topic is fostering the Ukrainian citizens' access to culture and cultural heritage, notably for displaced persons in a country like Ukraine in a situation of war. Access to culture is an important social dimension of the Creative Europe Culture program. The third topic is looking ahead, already preparing post-war recovery and reconstruction, I would say, of the cultural and creative sector. More specifically, more technically, to address project Objective 1 and Objective 2, 2 envelopes of €2 million each were reserved. For Objective 1 and Objective 2, 70% of the grant should be used to what we call regranting. That means that project beneficiaries will finance, let's say, a smaller size project with the EU fund. So it's what we call cascading grants in EU jargon. Let's say. And for the last objective, Objective 3, the post-war recovery, the envelope reserve was of €1 million. So with that, we would spend the envelope of €5 million. But there was a special event less than a year ago, the Recovery Conference in Rome in July 2025, where our commissioner participated, and many European ministers, together with the ministers, the Ukrainian ministers, and there was a joint effort of all European, let's say, cultural decision makers to do more. So there's been this concept of Team Europe, all the European ministers gathering to support the Ukrainian cultural sector. In this contest, the European Commission, represented by Clem Mikalev, that you've heard, decided to put a financial top-up to the call, and it's been increased by €2 million. So we end up with a total of 4 highly relevant and important projects, targeting each one of the 3 priorities. So we've got 1 more than initially planned. And given the regranting dimension of 3 of the projects, we expect under this second call, specific call for Ukraine, an initial number of 14 regranting calls for proposals, with a target of 300 and 80, almost 400 sub-projects to be funded under the special call. So, like for the first call, we wanted to reinforce cultural cooperation between Ukraine and other Creative Europe countries. By the way, Creative Europe countries extend beyond the mere European Union, because now 41 countries participate in the program, with the very recent accession of Moldova to the program. And we wanted to help further integrate the cultural and creative sector of Ukraine in the EU's cultural landscape. It's already happening, but this call aims at accelerating it. And that's part also, as is mentioned, of the overall context of Ukraine's accession application to the European Union. Thank you very much to all. Thanks again for having us. And I wish you a very fruitful day of presentations and interaction around those very important and beautiful projects that we have selected.
Дякуємо вам. Можна плескати.
Thank you. Thank you. You can applaud. Everybody will hear us. Haven't you been tired? We hope that you are not tired, as now we were going to listen to another objectives, and of course about Square by Malevich. So, and we also have one more presentation. And yeah, Mikhail Ulyanov, Creative Desk Ukraine. Yeah, please. Hello, I have an unusual task for today, and because so do we have my part of presentation? Okay. Well, let's talk about conceptually. So maybe there is somebody who don't know who's Malevich.
So basically, Валерій Лобановський, він казав, so that the score, we can all see the score. The score cannot be disputable, and so we are glad to announce you the score and about the work of our work in 2025. Here you see on the screen the statistics about the context of the project European Union Creative Europe. So you see the number of applicants and the number of Ukrainian applicants in the orange color. You see the growth of the number of Ukrainian applicants. And this, here you see the funds which Ukrainian organizations received to implement their projects in the context of consortium with their partnership. And this is a very pleasant statistics. Mr. Alexander wrote a script for the portal of European Commission, and we checked it. It's totally legible. He shared this information. Many thanks to him. And this script allows to compile these statistics from the portal, and this makes the life so much more convenient for all participant countries. Next slide is our statistics in the context of 2025, and you can see this statistic. And Mr. Mikhailo also said that we as Creative Europe, how we can be useful to you. It's very simple. We can help you find international partners. We can help you form design of your projects and to provide many recommendations on how to write successful applications. And later, when you implement your successful projects, we will help you to promote results and will help to streamline your projects and to make them even more successful and useful. And very often we can be very interesting counterparts to talk to. We can support you mentally, morally, and support your mental state. And also, another a few more moments are important. They're special in the context of the special con contest. We said that especially in those contests which will be outside of 2024, it's important to apply the cascade granting, because this is a very useful instrument for adaptation and a certain link in the design of the program, and in the design of the European Union Cultural Europe. And because this allows to cover the financing of all the projects and the success of this quite scaled sub-granting contest, and 3 projects which will be implemented. It will be very important experience for the European Commission and European Executive Agency for Education and Culture to plan further steps outside beyond 2026 and to support culture. How can we in Ukraine, how can we be useful to you in Ukraine? We are friends and colleagues with all projects that will be implemented by the sub-granted and the sub-granted programs. And so we can be a point of contact for you. You can turn to us because, of course, with our friends from Ukrainian Cultural Fund, we have very good relations with them. We also have very good relations with Isolation Fund, and so we can facilitate you as much as, of course, we have resources and time to do so, and we could help you to communicate with those who implement those projects. And I wish to all of you, especially those of you who will be applicants for this sub-granted contests and the ones who will use the benefits of those projects, you are in luck. You are lucky because those projects who will implement those projects by the result of the contest, these are the very good and very experienced teams. And so I have no doubt that the result of this context will reinforce the capabilities of the Ukrainian cultural sector.
Yeah, thanks a lot. For moral support, especially. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we have some situations when there are traffic jams in Kiev, and even our event is influenced by them. So, now next speaker is being late, but it's not a problem because we have a lot of plan A, B, and C, and now we would like to, Anastasia Rosenberg and to represent project Zmina Resilience. Dear colleagues, I would like to greet you and also have my colleague Katerina, and we are representatives of international organization, and now here our project Zmina Resilience. And we will give a short presentation of it. And first of all, we are really glad to see you, despite all these hardships. And actually, it's really a great maximum to have such events, and we are really grateful that our team could do and could gather you to here. So the first, this project is first of all about resilience and about Ukrainian organizations, how they not only survive in such conditions, but to do their best to become stronger through partnership, through collaborations, and of course to go to European level. And if you talk about strategy, and that's support of Ukrainian cultural sector and through European support. And of course, it's very important because we want to join the European Union, so that's really vital. And of course, that's also important. We focus at trainings and we focus at collaborations between international organizations and of course different programs of Creative Europe. And our main goal is to build so-called bridges. And next slide. If you talk about language of resilient change, yeah, we are going to talk about culture sectors, and this project appears not only from resilience but from a huge team, and of course that's about changing culture sector. And in the course of Zmina Rebuilding course, we supported more than 38 organizations and more than 1,400,000 euros were, and more than 60 stakeholders were involved. And of course, a lot of organizations and partners could able to operate thanks to that. And next slide, you can see an image of the map where Ukraine has left its footsteps, so-called. They're not just geographical names, and that's really this where our Ukrainian artists cooperated with European colleagues, and that's really that's great because it's not only about in Ukraine, not only in with the program of European Creative Europe. And we also see that projects haven't been not only implemented in capitals but also in small towns as well, and even villages. And now, of course, we are going forward, and Zmina resilience is not only about rebuilding; it's about restoration of cultural heritage, and also to be able to stand out among our European colleagues. And the scope of the project was able to happen thanks to our partners, Mali Berlin and Independent Cultural Center in Trnava. Its organizations, they actively involved in developing international cooperation and within Central European region and Eastern Partnership countries, and also another network, Trans-Europe Halles. It's really huge European giant, which includes more than 140 organizations across 4 countries, and for us it means great success to huge community of professionals, which we of course use. We also would like to express our gratitude to Danish Culture Institute. As thanks to it, we are able to enlarge our resources and to provide huge support to Ukrainian cultural sector. On the next slide, we can see that you can see. We want that Ukrainian managers feel comfortable, not only just that they receive grants, but that they should understand how to work with bigger projects and how to behave, and in general how to work with cross-cultural projects as well. And also it's about partnership at the same level. As we have worked a lot and we are for honest partnership, and not and of course it's about collaboration, and where every voice is important, and where relationships between us and Europe are really long term. And of course, grants is about high quality products, and of course that what we create together. That's about exhibitions, performances, and of course the list may be long. But the most important is that about results. What we create not only for Ukraine but for Europe and for the whole world. And the key, of course, about integration of Ukraine into European context through modern culture and innovation culture as we have now. And of course, we want a European audience is able to see our Ukrainian identity, and of course our goals are ambitious, but we have a clear structure and clear plan how to achieve that, and we are moving to that. And for me, we are quite successful in that. And Katerina will talk more about our directions. Thank you. Hello to everyone. Yes, I will talk about different directions of financing, which will be open soon, and all organizations of cultural sector may become our sub-partners and be able to create. And let's start with co-creation grants, and that's the project of international projects and grants. It's not about our cool idea, but it's about collaboration and about Ukrainian, at least one Ukrainian organization with one organization from Creative Europe. And when two organizations have equal rights, and they create their own project, and then they present it to local organizations. And of course, our request will be two presentations, one in Ukraine and one in country of Creative Europe, maybe the country which our partner is from. And as you see, the grant is 25,000 euros, and it may cover about 90% of costs. And of course, the most important to be this project to be presented publicly in Ukraine and in our country of our partner. And next slide, you can see requirements and March is soon, and we're really looking forward to it. And the first open call will be in March and April. We are going to accept applications. Then we will have an expert selection. And since July, realization of the first part will start, and the whole. It will be 7 months, and in October will be the second open call. Then, as usual, acceptation of applications, then selection, and then realization during next 7 months. Next direction is about KSIN. Its direction for projects which have already been created for them to the most of audience will know about them, and of course to strengthen collaboration between Ukraine and European partners. And here the requirement about 3 public presentations, at least two countries. One is Ukraine. Taking into consideration hardships and the conditions we are living now in Ukraine, of course, it may be online or offline. It depends on the situation, but the most important that public presentation will take place in Ukraine, and our audience also will benefit from that. Maximum sum of grant is 50,000 euros, and it may cover like about 70% of the whole project budget. About showcasing, the key point is flexibility, and we can see that acceptation of applications will be during 16 months without any breaks, and you can apply for it since July and to September 2027, when project is ready for implementing. It may be international festival, international tour. So as soon as the project is ready, you may apply. And of course, we will choose winners, and then realization of this project will take place during 7 months. And also, Zmina Resilience is not only grant per program. We have two points. Yeah. First, we support cultural organizations, Ukraine, and of partners from Creative Europe. And the second direction of our work is that we support cultural sector to work and to realize these cultural projects, and of course cultural trainings. And in our program, we will have 20 workshops during the 5 topics will be, which are key for, of course, the affordable culture. It's actually a worldwide notion, because culture should be affordable, not only should be physically and mentally affordable, and it's not only about it's also work with trauma and maximum interaction with audience. And next topic is, of course, green culture. It's really vital for each cultural project. It's about sustainability, quality assessment, and about thinking beforehand. As we think about saving our natural sources. And next topic is participatory methods. It's not that we create audience product for audience, but we create product together with the audience. Next point is communication. It's not just post or information on social networks. It's clear understanding for whom and with whom we work. Next topic is cultural project management. It's just basic. We have clear goals, and we have balanced partnerships, and we are always ready to have results, because without it any project can't be successful. And also the aim of capacity building sessions is not only to support several projects, but just to make possible for cultural sector to strengthen it, more resilient, and in general compatible in realization of cultural projects. And also you can see what webinars will be held in the course of capacity building sessions, and of course we can register using our QR code, and a little bit later we will talk how to do it. And one more slide, one activity which is important inside our Zmina Resilience. It's about about short moderate sessions that, like each organization which is looking forward for partners may have a short pitch to talk about their aims, their goals, and of course to be able to have a future dialogue with the future partners, and these sessions have proved that they are really effective. And during such sessions, we really provide advice what to focus on, for example, about the geographical location, maybe to focus at the country, and of course, it really narrows. A number of organizations and partners which they can work with. And next slide, you can see you can see a QR code where you can subscribe for to stay tuned with our future events, our trainings, and when our open calls are opened, and of course to see requirements, and of course let's join and develop creative and cultural sector of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. First of all, are there any who have taken part in projects Mineral Building? Maybe online participants? So just a comment if you have taken part. Maybe we have among our participants who are going to take. Oh yeah, we have two hands. Yeah, three participants. Yeah, that's great. And if there are any volunteers through our online, also comment with maybe emoji and yeah. And we will continue, and I would like to give the floor to the presentation. Olga Zaydak, cultural manager and expert of cultural event. Yeah. Thank you. As I see, the plan has changed, and we have already adapted to live not according to a plan. So I'm really grateful to be able to think, to listen to my colleagues and to think what I would like to say. And I will start with conditions we have been living for the 5 years, and these conditions have taught us a lot and have opened quite a lot of opportunities and doors. And the program which we are talking about is a great example of that. And I would like not to talk now, first of all, about challenges, but about opportunities which we have got. And to my mind, we are in that phase where everybody knows what they are doing, and everybody knows. And first of all, about our state and government is finally we have cultural strategy for till 2030, and we have here among our friends who was involved in and think that we have the strategy, that we have milestones, we have priorities, and of course safe of cultural heritage, and be in international floor, and of course there is a strategy, you can read about it. And this document is really useful not only for government and for artists, but also for communities, and of course for actors of culture who can find their own place in that huge program. And to my mind, experience of our last visits to communities, that it's really important to help to formulate what is important now. And we have one point, and it's a kind of motto, a bit formal, but that culture is a part of our state safety. And this, and also then president and government mentioned that, and now it has changed, and not clear what context now it has got.
And this statement, we so much focus on this statement, and now that we need to explain it, what is the national security? And I think that one of the priorities, which was also part of the strategy, and we also try to highlight this question. First of all, it's human capital, people, artists, those who create, co-creators, creators, managers of institutions, and also users, consumers. And we realize that we are losing people. Even according to our researchers, of course, there are not enough researches that are being carried out in the culture, but even from what we see, we understand that the number of artists reduced by 30%, and this means that those who remain, they have to work at least by 1/3 more. We also understand that we are lacking not only hands, but we are lacking specialists, professionals who have systematic vision, who can organize, who can help, mentor, help other peers and creators. And we also lack people with managerial skills. We have huge problems with education, with teachers, with those who would be able to mentor modern artists. We also lack people, don't have enough people who could help to integrate into the current circumstances and to integrate into European community. And so we lack many people on many levels. And this challenge, it's inherent only to our circumstances, because while donors can help with financing, nobody will help us with people. Nobody will give us people. This is our challenge, which we should face and think how to cope with it. But I promised also to tell you some good news. Good news is that the strategy of culture as a roadmap is this roadmap actually gives sprout of some new steps, and in the form of reforms and the steps that the government makes. And I'm very glad that on the last week the government issued a resolution on evacuation, new resolution on evacuation of cultural heritage, and this allows actually the museum managers and administrators to take decisions, and it gives the procedure actually for museum administrative staff to evacuate their masterpieces. And also there was the law about charity passed, which fix at the level of legislator actually the procedure of charity. Of course, additional procedures are needed, but the intent to see the Ukrainian charitable people as supporters for Ukrainian culture, it was important to arrange it at the level of legislature. And we also see another very positive new thing, that the government for this year planned some measurable results, which can help us to basically to measure how we are pacing ourselves, whether the government keeps up with the plan organized, with the plan prepared beforehand, and how the digitalization is going on. Of course, we might not satisfy with the result, but at least we can measure the achievements, the results, and compare them with the plan. And also, we can, of course, argue whether this raising up to 16 billions, whether it's really raising the funding, because we understand the inflation, but raising of this figure is also a positive sign. And I'm sure we will see that in practice manifested in the increase in the cultural fund of Ukraine, which will be able to support almost twice more projects. And I welcome really this initiative, and I welcome Yulia Хремчим and Anastasia Kravtsova with what they signed in Lviv. So that would be a mechanism for support of local funds. So we can see at the state level that the culture, at least at the level of declaration, is not on the marginal field. We also can see from the experience of the artists that the government cooperates with civil organizations, and many of you are part of the task force, and we receive some project description of projects, so we have the opportunity to criticize them. Then we can see a reflection of this criticism. Now about another opportunity that we have from the outside is the visibility of Ukraine. That visibility first was connected with the full-scale invasion, but gradually the visibility have been shaped in a quite systematic way. The representation of Ukrainian Cultural Institute abroad in Paris, Berlin, Netherlands now, cooperation with institutions, systematic cooperation with cultural diplomacy tells us that at least there are some middle-term programs. Currently, there is the season of Ukraine in France, and it's quite popular. There are all the halls are filled with people. And when we launched the institute, the France Institute, the Ukrainian Institute in France, we noticed that the first visitors were Ukrainians. Now all the halls, all the audiences are filled with French audience, and those are large halls, large classrooms, large audience, large movie theaters. And of course, we need to expand our international presence, and for that we need finance and support planning. We still are not ready to plan for long term, and it's a big challenge because our foreign partners are used to have long-term plans for 5, sometimes 10 years ahead, like big grounds, large museums. But at the same time, we are getting used. We're getting accustomed so we're getting adjusted to them, and they're getting adjusted to us. And I think we are moving towards each other, and understanding by Ukraine. So understanding of our ecosystem, understanding of Ukraine by them, by our partners, I think we see some positive achievements in that regard. And also I should mention the huge international support, which basically now carries all the private cultural sector and all the state cultural sector. Basically, it's all the money of international donors, and
хорошої ініціативи, яка виросла, власне, з експертних обговорень, з проєкту «Респол», який фінансувався Європейською комісією, як і ця програма. Проєкт Респол напрацював 95 документів, які були пов'язані з аналізом всіх проблем сфери культури, пропонував політики, пропонував стратегічні брифи для певних ініціатив. Одною з таких ідей, яка
And one of such ideas which was paused and then renewed again in the Respol project, there was another mechanism for cultural heritage, and the state also took up this initiative, and quite demonstratively this initiative grew from the expert environment and then went into the international environment, and then the state picked up this initiative and took it as a ready concept of state policy. And now we have this year the Ukrainian Fund of Cultural Heritage started to work in Brussels, and now there is an open call for the executive director, and please don't disregard this opportunity to try yourself to be in this role to support Ukrainian heritage. Now, getting back to the role of international donors, it's hard to overstate their role, the funds from different sources, and the European Commission in this regards plays very important role because it ensures direct financing through traditional programs, Horizon, Creative Europe, and we have joined also media pool of possibilities, and it's great. It's great that we are getting used to a new culture of planning. For us as a planning manager, it's important because Creative Europe is not annual programs, but these are the programs for 3 years term, and there are even longer programs. And I really hope that thanks to such initiatives, we will learn these tools how to plan for longer than 1 year. And now getting from the state level, I hope I keep within the timing. But if I overtake the time, please signal to me. And now getting to the level of civil organizations, it should be mentioned the opportunities to activate all the skills which were dormant, and it turned out that we have many managers who can write complex grants proposals, and even though currently managers from large cities, but they are more active, and we see fewer people from smaller towns. But that would be our next step to engage our colleagues from smaller cities and towns. And I am sure that because for Creative Europe, in order to write an application, you need to be a junior, to spend time as a junior partner, then full partner. And about the impact of the civil society. Obviously that in the first years of the full-scale invasion, what happened in culture, both in heritage or rescuing our artists or rescuing basically the objects of arts, it all was carried by the civil organizations on their shoulders because they are resilient due to their flexibility. They're able to act quicker, and very often one organization would have overtaken the functions of diplomacy and cultural heritage and training. Case Hemalap, which documented crimes and went to all international grounds and created manuals to teach people locally. I am sure that I do not list all the cases, but obviously, on one hand, it means about huge motivation and realization, the meaning of our work. But on the other hand, it's about realization that you are part of the larger mission. And thirdly, people unfortunately also have the tendency to burn out to lose their goals out of sight. And this brings me back to one of our priority today is to save people and to save managers who currently carry a huge load of responsibility on their shoulders. When we say that civil organizations are first of all about components of those civil organizations, the workers, the citizens who are parts of these organizations, we understand that there are many painful breakthroughs, like in the painting. There is some gap, which signifies the fragility. Which, when you can see this gap, you understand that you need to reinforce or to restore your painting. It's about time to restore your painting, and we also have understanding of different experiences living through the war in different cultures in different regions. What occupied cities can feel, we cannot even imagine how our colleagues which remain in the occupied area, what they live through. God allow sometime we will learn what they've been through, but currently we don't have this experience, don't have access to the experience. Those people who are currently under attack, who live next to the front line, who always have are torn between the choice to rescue their close ones or to pursue the goals of organization. It is all a separate experience, and the Kiev also have its own unique experience. This is an experience of a hub where many decisions are being taken.
And Kiev at night, and I think a lot of people who had slept today in Kiev, and all people who experience this bombing attacks, but in the morning they wake up, drink strong coffee, and then they continue to live their life and to do their work. And that's a great example of bright resilience, experience of regions which are somehow safe. We don't have any safe regions, but they are a bit less attacked. But they take the whole responsibility for saving collections, museum collections, and also they give space for universities and for cultural heritage. And of course, we should be tolerant and understand that there is no other way out. We also have breaks between colleagues who have left the country, and mostly colleagues and most artists who didn't have enough acceptation here in Ukraine, and now they have. And they have integrated to their life abroad, and maybe they will connect their life with another country, and we should accept that. But believe me, during first 2 years I also lived abroad, and it's not always to feel happy and safe abroad. And because even you can be happy even in unsafe place, and my own experience that of two other years in Ukraine during the war, that I'm happy here. But about artists who have left the country and now are making some bridges, they are our people, and of course they're helpful, and we should preserve this connection and value these connections. The most painful break is, of course, connected with war, with that part of our colleagues have changed the creative profession to become soldiers, and some of them, unfortunately, soldiers who died, and about 350 colleagues died, and some of them got injured and won't be able to come back to their creative work as they have disabilities. And also it's a hard challenge how to come our colleagues back to from war, and how them to feel again that they are a part of culture sector again. And also that's about women who didn't have such duty, but they had to refuse from creative work, and became soldiers. And also that we can see that armies is experience is indicator of harassments and gender inequality and unfortunately all bad things we have in our society. And now army shows that. So also we have misunderstandings with men artists who have to become soldiers, but of course some of them, of course, use that opportunity as they are artists and to leave Ukraine for their creative profession. But no, I'm not sure that if they are happy there, but it's their choice, and we should respect that. But maybe later we will cooperate with them, but of course we will have to discuss such not pleasant topics. So all these cracks, I don't want them to become a huge gap. And if to summarize, as cultural actors create that idea that culture is a part of national safety, I would like to tell you one more point, that our safety and our resilience is about our unity, and unity for artists and for cultural actors is an example of unity for the whole society. So I ask you to be united, and take into consideration in your projects that we should strengthen our unity. Yeah, thank you a lot. And personally, I would like to express my gratitude that you have paid attention to a lot of good things, and that I'm convinced that because bad things will find us themselves, and good things are about changes, and yeah, we are talking about that. And now let's come back to our projects. And Uliana Kostenko, I'm manager of organization in Shausvita, and she'll present project Culture Helps Solidarity. Thank you, Diana, for a presentation of myself, and thank you a lot for everybody who is here. I'm really glad to see you. Organization Громадська освіта develops educational programs and to create physical and mental spaces of collective education through education and culture and art. And one of our biggest project is about solidarity. And if you know about our organization, I think you may remember about our project Culture Helps, and maybe even have taken part in that. So culture helps solidarity. And this new project is a new level for us, a new scale for us, and that's about not about quality, but about new values of solidarity, that values of collaboration, mutual support, and through culture and art. And let's talk about it in details. And if to talk about, if to take it in short, about the meaning of this project, then it's about a project where we provide some grants in 3 levels. Individual level grant, where we have 14 rounds, and 1 round has recently finished, and in March we will start with the second round. Next level is project grant. We have 4 rounds, and the biggest level is international collaboration grants. And of course, rounds are longer, and the first one has already started and will be till the end of March. So, if to talk about topics, we focus on several main goals. And the first is what Olga says, that about support of our professionals, especially their mental health, and of course their personal resilience for all professionals who work with IDPs, and of course with veterans, and whose personal and mental life have been suffered from full-scale invasion. Also, we focus to provide access to local art practices, and of course to cultural heritage, and to all who had to leave Ukraine and or the native city inside Ukraine, and also for veterans. And the third focus is to provide integration into European cultural infrastructure, and build resilient connections between Ukraine and European institutions to overcome challenges of the war. And maybe the brightest focus here, solidarity plays the biggest role. And also to achieve it won't be possible to achieve all these goals without our partners and European Cultural Foundation, thanks to it, which is based in Amsterdam. Also our long-term partner ZUSA in Berlin, and new partner new organizations Veteranka. And thanks to them, we are able to help our veterans, and we as people who help with education. And of course, we provide people-centered approach to education. And now we can talk in details about all levels of grants, and this may be the most important part for all who are interested in taking part in such grants. So individual grants focus generally at support mental health and well-being support, who work with IDPs, and who deal with their integration. And if you listen to us online, if you live in the country of Creative Europe, because of full-scale invasion. Such grant may be actual for you. And inside also in that level we have 14 grounds, and second call will start from the 2nd of March, so you can apply for this grant and follow other rounds. Another level is project grants, and which is will last till the middle of April, and it focus for integration of FDPs to provide access for cultural practices, for cultural heritage, and
And the specific of this grant is that at each round we will provide support in the form of a theme webinar, which will help to outline the contour of the project which you plan to implement. And first webinar will be dedicated to the unity or lack of unity in communities, and what is the and highlight what is the cultural role, what is the role of culture in restoration of those ties and bringing unity back to those community. And we also focus on building international communication between Ukrainian institutions, Ukrainian agencies, and European agencies in order to ensure access to culture for internally displaced persons, veterans, and other vulnerable groups. And there is a call. The call continues until March 31. And so, if you have idea in any idea, creative idea, please. The call is open. Please, you can submit your application. This is one of the opportunities to reinforce the voice of Ukraine abroad via cultural projects. Next. So so basically the theme they apply to different groups, audiences, but the essence of cultural and solidarity project basically to sustain and support the professionals and artists and co-creators and those who have experienced, who've been impacted by the full-scale invasion, in particular veterans, volunteers, and internally displaced persons. The project of culture helps. So the Solidarity project will continue for 2 years, and we have quite ambitious plans for this period to support 90 creators and artists via individual grants, 60 funded cultural projects within Ukraine, and 30 supported cross-border partnerships within the international cooperation grants. And we hope that we will be able to cover 200 grantees across Ukraine and Creative Europe countries. And we invite you to apply. Please apply with your bright and brave ideas. And on the next slide, you will see a QR code which will bring you to the website of our project. And please subscribe to our social media pages and so that you are up to the date. And thank you for attention. And until next time. Thank you, dear Uliana. Thank you for other education project and for our partners and co-organizers of this event. Now I invite to the floor the project Cultural Horizons, the Executive Director of Ukrainian Cultural Fund, Anastasia Obraztsova. Thank you very much. I will have with me my colleague Katerina. She is responsible for the presentation. I will remind you that our project, Cultural Horizons, aims at expansion of the access for Ukrainians to cultural practices. And of course, it's not only about the number of grants. You know, it's something, it's only about the number of grants. But it's more about people, for the people to get together, to create partnership, get together in partnership, and by this reinforce professional community. This is the main idea behind this project. And I would like also to say that this project is based on our expertise, on our support for cultural projects. And this also project allows to go outside externally. And it also acts as an auxiliary function, auxiliary feature for our cultural fund. And so the project will run for 2 years. We plan to support over 85 projects within this time span, and 40 individual and 20 resident artists. As I said before, so at least 157 million euros will be allocated to this, to one grant, to one project, and the majority of the projects will be aimed to pursue the goal international by default, which means that all our propositions, all our call will have a requirement to have an international partner. We hope that this will allow these projects to overgrow into the international or partnership initiatives. For us also, mentorship component is important, and we feel how the lack of mentorship. We lack mentors who would follow up you during the project pre and post project stages. Cultural Horizons we implement with our partnership partners, German organization Culture Vistas, and here I hope that we'll be able to combine our expertise to finance cultural projects and their expertise in terms of reinforcement of institutional capabilities. And here, using this opportunity, I would like to reflect on what Olga Sagaidak said. You know, when we together with partner, we have Zooms every week, and when in the beginning we made some certain date and certain day of the week, and when our partner asked, for example, let's do it on Tuesday or Thursday, and at that time we have outages, like electricity outage, and then ask, they of course sympathetic with us and say, okay, when next Thursday you will have the electricity on, and we're trying to explain them then it's not possible to predict, because we live in different situations, different circumstances, but we are trying to make an appointment and make a date and to synchronize this cooperation anyway. So what we aim to do, the Ukrainian Cultural Fund implements 3 grant programs, 2 for organizations and 1 for individual artists. Our partner implements 1 grant program to support residences in the territory of Europe, but one main condition, this program should be for Ukrainians and with inclusion of Ukrainians. As I said before, there is international component. So about deadline, we will synchronize with all our partners. But we will plan to start in June, and every next month we will open 1 more grant program. So in October we will open scholarships. Now about specifics of scholarships and grant programs. So you know about scholarships, but now about grant programs. The first context, the main of the requirements is innovative component. Some digital component must be present. The second contest, which will be open, aims at support local culture, and here we will focus on small communities, and in order to highlight specifics of their local culture, but with mandatory requirement of international partner. By this, we want to stimulate partnership so that a small territorial community would find itself an international partner. The large this project is not designed for large centers. Next grant contest will be for debuts, for new projects, because we feel that we must support professionals who graduated from their professional educational facilities, and they only plan to open their professional activity. The scholarships next, which will start in October. This is also what we lacked before within the last 4 years of support. The scholarships, which will allow some financial opportunities to pay maybe some fees, some membership fees, to pay for hotels, for the travel costs, to reinforce by physical meeting with partners, or to find the partner if somebody has not found them. This will be advantage and disadvantage at the same time, because you know the contest procedures of the Ukrainian Cultural Fund, each program which will be followed by webinars and informational events. And as we said before, we will have deadlines. We will kickstart from March, but and in the end of March, we will have a more deeper presentation, and we will announce additional call for mentors. So who can apply? The representatives from Ukraine and EU can apply to this project. Mostly it will be carried by our German partner, and to help those who will later implement the project. And we will end. So we can see that our project corresponds to the strategic goals of promoting and developing Ukraine in Ukraine and also in EU. And we also aim to expand the opportunities, and this is what we felt we needed long time ago for us, and it will be our challenge. I hope you will not feel this challenge, because we are ruled by the Code of Ukraine. There are some legislative issues, but we will overcome them. And as we say, the culture is the language about our future, culture, unity, and freedom. And the last slide, I encourage you to apply, and please pay attention to deadline. You might forget that now the 9th grant season will run to an end soon. So please keep up with the deadlines, keep track on our social media and on our platforms. Thank you for attention. Thank you, and we also hope to the Ukrainian Cultural Fund, which is a co-organizer of this event, and I invite to the floor to present the 4th project for the Chancellor of the Lviv National Academy of Arts. Good day, dear colleagues. it's my honor. It's my honor to present this project on behalf of the platform of UAX. And in order to start this project, so this project will be different from the other project. It's not a sub-grant project, but it's no less important to develop our cultural and educational capabilities. And the main goal of this project is on the education and culture. And first, I would like to tell you a bit more what is UAX program, because without understanding of this program, it would be difficult to understand what tasks we aim to pursue. And so in 2022, in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the organization, European organization,
Є велику мережу
It's unites educational organizations joined to help cultural education, which with the challenges which were created, and that there was a huge support. As we had at once meetings with all representatives of cultural art education in Ukraine and in Europe, and through such art projects in Ukraine and Europe, and then global communication and creation of together projects together started, and also it was at the level of even material help when we got generators and things we got to realize cultural education. So, and the platform UAX has been trying to support cultural educational institutions and during 3 years, and now they have the goal to spread all these good practices for the whole cultural heritage. And the goal of this project, UAX EU, represents to strengthen cultural sector through building of capacities and intersectoral collaboration between Ukrainian and European cultural networks. We have talked a lot today about that and about challenges we have in the cultural sector, but we understand that needs aren't different, which we have already talked. Of course, the need to modernize our educational programs and vulnerability of our institution and our art education, and also the lack of opportunities of our artists to realize on our labor market, and also the need to implement some methodologies and which exist in European higher education and cultural sector. And I will also talk a bit who are in that platform, and so coordinators are Elia Europe, and they are based in Netherlands, and I have recently come back from there. So from Ukraine, it's Lviv National Academy of Arts and Ukrainian Museum Association and Coalition of Culture Actors, and also to civil organizations. And also it's important that we have NKU, and that it's very important to have such partners, because without government and without state organs, it's impossible to do that and to realize Also, we have partners from the EU and KU Utrecht, University of the Arts in Netherlands, and Culture Action Europe in Belgium and Brussels. And also, it's one more organization which has ability to influence on changes in European cultural space. Also, we have here the goal of our project to build the capacity of Ukrainian higher education and in Ukrainian cultural sector. And we have understood clearly that all milestones that have been written in the cultural strategy till 2030, all these changes without taking that into consideration won't be possible. Now I will talk more about the task and challenges and from practical side. So we have some points that we have some sustainable points that we created them in 2022, and now that's about matter support for our students. And for students from 15 higher educational institutions, that's institutions from Minister of Culture and also Minister of Education, and there will be 90 students of ministry programs and for medicine. Previous program was for bachelor degree, now for master's degree, and we chose the best of the best, and the students got mentor support from our colleagues and from European colleagues, and this mentor support included that our students were involved in some context, and that we try to shape those artists. We are talking about different specialization, but professionals with compatible and can share their ideas around the world. One more project which will be developed in the above this grant. That project was created in 2023, and it was Academy for Veterans, and it's very important to feel this mission that veterans and people who suffer from war, that they need our help. And of course, that's about our social responsibility. The project means that we have space in Lviv. Our different teachers from different spheres, cultural spheres, together with the psychologists, psychiatrists, and with the centers of mental health, come to this academy and involve in the process of art creation. We call it about trauma-informed cultural practices. It's somehow like art therapy, but we don't have therapists as it means. So we're talking about trauma-informed cultural practices trainings. Now we understand in what context which practices we can use, and of course, doctors from that academy they share the experience how art can treat and can heal, and what can be prescribed ceramics or maybe painting or some musical education to heal and to renew their mental health. And for us, it's a brand new idea, but we understand that but understand that it will be used in other educational institutions which will want to join, because this need will become more and more important. Also, safe of cultural heritage is also our one of key aspect for our community. And also we have and here we have some practical tasks, of course, to develop professional standards, because we want to speak the same language with our European colleagues, and we want also to say that our trainings, our online meetings, and any educational initiatives should lead to special results. And now it's been popularized about some micro qualification, and where people can change their qualification and to develop adults with gained experience in some fields. With the help of different forms, we'll be able to get some new qualifications or change qualifications. And here we have two standards. We have higher ambitions, but we have two main. It's about museum sector and museum sector managers, and about restorators. But it's not about artist restorators, but that's about handicraft restoration. We do really need handicraft restorations now, as now we have lost a bit of them, and a lot of architectural some architectural things, and for example, frame or door of 17th century need handicraft restorator. And of course, balconies, some ancient balconies are needed in restorators. And of course, here we have to change approaches and how we can to change qualification of such handicraftsmen. And that's about long-term process, and about informal education. And of course, professional standards will be our roadmap for that. About skills for cultural and creative sector. For me as educator, it's a bit painful topic. As a Minister of Education now is gathering groups to develop standards of education, but we should understand what standards are represented there, but we should understand that it's not just a document that doesn't have any influence, but some standards sometimes cause some surprise, and we write our complaints about these standards to also to exclude them because they don't help. And also we have such approach to create so-called new bicycle, but about educational standards and cultural standards and professional standards. The most important for us is to be able to include a lot of professionals, and that all the standards will be comparable and with what is going on in European society. Second important goal in UAX EU is, of course, about networking. So since 2022, I have an opportunity to observe how dynamic cultural network has become, and we have got an opportunity to become partners with our partners from abroad. And education has been changed step by step for sure, but now we can see the dynamic that now we have such practices to go around Europe and to share our experience and get their experience. And it's also important for our students. The networking is extremely important. And in the course of this project, we will continue the support of 15 art educational institutions and their membership in that global partnership area.
6 cultural agencies already in the process of engaging into the cultural Europe. And within this project, it's important that peer-to-peer will be also part of this project, which will allow the opportunity to learn from the colleagues' experience exchange, and also to communicate our agenda to them, which is very important. That's all from me. Maybe crumbled in the end presentation. I get the presentation just yesterday. The coordinator of our project, who is now in the Netherlands. Thank you. Thank to you. In fact, I have been listening. I feel really joy that we now have so much more opportunities for Ukrainian cultural diplomacy and for the organization Ukrainian Abroad. And I would like now to pick your questions. I will now take your questions. To the question which we have online, and maybe. So how to synchronize all this? How to get on all 4 projects? And are these projects different and maybe similar? And where they're different? And somewhere that was mentioned that we are competing against each other. In fact, there are much more activities within the project. So the project Creative Europe projects continue for last for 3 years, and here is the timeline for 2 years. But the last event will be held in 2028, and so we need to concentrate our attention and to be very attentive, because in fact on our side, like organizers and our co-organizers, our partners, we definitely see the difference between those projects. Even though they overlap globally, they all aim on the similar target audience, but there are differences, and we call on you to pay attention and to participate in all these presentations, which will be organized by our partners, by our fund, and where we will tell you in greater detail what should be, what should not be done, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and then so that you for yourself will be able to take decision what attracts you the most, what fits the better, what fits the best your idea. And of course you can apply to all 4 projects. If you have such capabilities, then you're welcome. But again, it's very important so that you remember that only you can make the decision to which project to apply, what project fits best your idea, training or some other, because there are other opportunities besides grant programs. There are many more opportunities for search of partners, for education, for future projects. So instead of going into diving into detail of this slide, we will send all the participants, all the registered participants, we will send this PowerPoint, and you will be able to study it in great detail. And who don't disregard the QR codes which are added in those PowerPoints, also subscribe to our subscription to our mailing list, to our news.
Супер, всі зібралися.
Well, everybody is here. I understand that you want to speak and to discuss a lot, but we will have exact time for that. So, and now let's have our panel discussion. The topic will depend on the colleagues, and you know, так, Anastasia Obraztsova, Cultural Fund, Isolation, Bajana Plenska, as Education, and Milana Cherna, Association of Ukrainian Museums. And moderate this discussion will be Hanna Katahidze. And Alevtina, I will give you the floor. Oh, hello everybody. So the first question, I will start with the Milana. What does cooperation means, and where is the limit between help and partnership? Thank you. That's a really good question. And if, to be honest, this question is really important, and we have highlighted it for 2 years. And of course, we accepted all help we got for our museums, and it was chaotic from the different museums. And of course, we accepted all this help, and it helped us what we are protecting now. But in 2023, the situation was changed, and we started with our partners from abroad, to have equal partnership. And also because we have experience that we had, and we hope that they won't have it any. And also thanks to that, they understand the value of our experience, and now we have a peer-to-peer partnership. And because we show gratitude for their help, and show our expertise for them for their help. And also we can, for example, tell how to act in some urgent situations, and how to protect, and how to save collections, even to break the laws. And people risked and saved our collections. And of course, because they know that they have evacuation plans and trainings and everything, and they think that everything will work. That rescuers come, like everybody comes and does their work, and everything works. Like rescuers comes, police officers, and do their job. But of course, it didn't work because. We had such experience in the museum, had to protect collections itself. And now they understand that we are partners and they appreciate our expertise. And so partnership was installed in 2023, and and it's a kind of exchange approach.
I will continue the same logic. So the project which we implement, cultural helps solidarity. So from one hand, solidarity, which envisages some parity in relations and also help. And I think that in these projects which have been presented today, there are both components, help and solidarity. If we develop this topic, then in my view, organizations applying for partnership, they already have some experience, and realization of this knowledge and experience, it's very important from the beginning of this cooperation. And I'm sure that our partners and we go on parity conditions in our cooperation. We even have documents which we mutually co-developed, based on which provide the ground for our cooperation, which include mutual respect, and mutual understanding of our modus operandi, and the standards of quality that we share, and allows us to understand how we should operate. So there are two components, both components are present. And another thing I wanted to say, of course, during all those years, we many times emphasized that for us, the parity is very important, but here we need to understand to understand this unique experience that we can share, and of course what we call knowledge, collective knowledge, which organizations acquire. All these components allow us to develop these parity partnerships, which I hope will multiply. And this example, other education, the project our education has with European Cultural Foundation and the European Cultural Fund from Amsterdam, and other education from Kiev, and Veteran, who is the fourth partner, is a very good example of a partnership, how a long-term partnership can be formed. And European Cultural Foundation is one of the most famous institutions in the European Union. And for us, this partnership has a lot of value, is very valuable. I will shift now a bit of focus of attention so that we do not repeat each other. But so in order to distinguish between partnership and help, for me, it's outlined by certain boundaries, especially I can see this in our programs when we speak about mentorship, not even about partnership, because there is very thin line, vice versa. On one hand, when we say about organizations which are only starting to build their experience, of course, here we will see more balance shift into the help. The help will outbalance the partnership component when somebody invested more and somebody gained more experience. And sometimes it's not about money, but it's about how much time one side of the partnership spent how much time one part spent on the implementation, and the value another side gains from this partnership. But over time, it gets a return on those investments, but you need to be proactive, because it's impossible to receive if you don't have a desire to receive. And of course, the first stage will be partnership, and then the next stage will be the being active. It's not static. It's not only when we sign the memorandum partnership agreement. The partnership only possible even for experienced participants, organizations, when all sides in the partnership are proactive. Without proactivity, without being proactive, there will be no partnership. I think you will agree on that with me. Thank you very much. I will try not to repeat what my colleague already said. And so what I'd like to say that we are a budget institution, and in the cooperation with the budget institution, it's probably the worst which could happen to you, but we will try to be the best of all budget agencies, budget institutions. Yes, we work with money, but not only with money, but also with our expertise and with our designers. And we have different partners: Ukrainian business, international organizations, military agencies, there are many partners, many participants, but definitely what should be present in relations with all partners, there should be present understanding of the partner. What is this partner? And to be honest at each stage of your partnership. And even if there are some difficulties in relations, but it's really great feeling when you when you overcome the first year of partnership. After 1 year of partnership, you understand better your partner. You don't have to discuss many things, because you understand your partner much better. My next question is how we would. So I suggest to take a look in your partnership, in your programs, and to distinguish between overcoming ramification, repercussions, and recovery. So how much is possible actually recovery for the Ukrainian society? To what extent the recovery is possible? So it's about our recovery. When it comes to recovery, it's not about some building or some structure, but it's about recovery, about our partnership recovery. And we have very flexible structure now. As you say, we position ourselves as a state fund for creative industries, and during full-scale invasion, we can use another word, stabilizer. And before, in order to so during the full-scale invasion, we focus more on those people who remained in Ukraine. And we, of course, have our own regulations, law regulations, and internal procedures, but at the same time, we have internal priorities. What are the priority goals? And when we ask our target audience, when it's everybody, then it's nobody. But we know that we have many state projects, and our main strength is in diversification of the projects. And especially we we also aim to support sensitive territories and to diversify this support to cover many categories. I'm not sure whether I answered your question. I would like to clarify, yes, if you use the word stabilizer, then recovery is not possible as such, right? Yes, and here is we would like to have some end state, end goal with matrix to understand what we have achieved, what we have recovered in full. But the fund rather would support the overall financing, income and flow of financing to support many directions, constant support of multiple directions, sustainability of support, and for us as a state fund, it's important to understand our own role. Then my next question is to Oksana, speaking about partnership, how we can take into account that the full-scale partnership sometimes is not possible if a certain institution or team does not have a resource. So what to do in such case and how to overcome such consequences? Not in resource. What do you mean does not have a resource? For example, even today, we did not sleep at night, and even if we had planned a Zoom conference, what to do in such circumstances when the Kiev team probably lacks under-resourced today? Here I would like to share experience, our team experience, and it would be includes also my experience. I've seen different partnerships, and I've been in different partnerships, and I think that we have stable and very good and reliable partnerships, but they are all different. There is no similar partnerships, because in my lectures and my seminars, I always say when we speak about partnership, we should remember that we work not organization with organization, but peer to peer, a person with a person, and these personalized connections, they really are very important, or even deeper contact at a personal level. It influences, it impacts the partnership, not the effectiveness of the partnership, but the way the partnership takes place. And at the level of peer-to-peer is a partnership, even speaking about super serious partnership in large projects like we have today, is when organization maintains large grants from a Creative Europe program, not even medium-sized, but large-sized projects, which means another level of documentation, accountability, protocols, etc. But when we shift to the mode person-to-person, then we understand, yes, we have a meeting scheduled today, but we are all human, and depending on the circumstance in which the meeting takes place, we can decide with a partner, with a certain partner, to change the format of the meeting. There are many different communication channels. For example, you can communicate via Messenger, or via email, and depending on what you want to communicate. And we can quickly communicate that this meeting will be rescheduled maybe next morning, or and this will communicate a level of support to your partner, of course, informal probably, but more humane. So what I want to say, the partnerships could be different, and they are all good. It doesn't mean that one partnership is better than the other. Each partnership has its own priority, and sometimes human partnership will have some drawbacks because it could relax too much. Thank you. Then my question to Bajana: how do you feel? Do you feel there is something in relations with Western partners that the attitude towards Ukrainians, that we are superhumans, that we can do anything, that we can cry and jump to work immediately, that we don't mind blackouts and can live without electricity. Do you feel this attitude, and does it change? Do you feel that sometimes you need to communicate that we are also, like Oksana says, humans? How can you reflect, please?
Well, coming back to the previous idea, talking about partnership, I would also to come back to the presentation of Olga Saydak, who told us that the most important for us resource is the people. And to my mind, from that presentation and what I know, people and support of people always present. And we have 14 rounds for individual grants, and that's really support for professionals in cultural sector, and this money is for everyone to be able to get and to restore their mental health, and to go abroad or to visit museums. It's also kind of having a rest, and and understanding such situations. And that what Anastasia mentioned today about stabilizing, thinking about that, and that understanding what conditions we are living in, and the supporting of people, and who are doing a great job, and it should be mentioned in all projects. And when we have such conditions, it should always be in each project, not only in these projects. And these individual grants for renovation, for your recovery of your mental health, because without understanding that everybody needs recovery of their own resources to be able to continue work as we want, and at that level we want of partnership, and to get results we want. And that's a short remark to previous question. And the second, how our partners see us, how our partners understand well, and we don't have such understanding that we are super people. Most of the time they clearly understand what conditions we are living in, and sometimes even surprised. While once there was a lot, and we understand, so you should go. You should go. Oh, of course, we were having fun and some jokes, but even such support we have. Or when it was freezing and attacks to infrastructure, and our partners accumulated funds and sent us blankets, and they always monitor the situation we have, and organizations we cooperate, and they have this clear understanding. Although being abroad and having different discussions with different people, unfortunately, there is a kind of hyperbolized attitude about us. No, sometimes we also supported that idea, but on the one side it's a kind of excitement, but on the other side we should also tell about fragility and vulnerability. but it's not an excuse that it's not an excuse that we haven't done something, but sometimes just honest discussion and about conditions and obstacles which appear. Yeah, that might be. So partners, they have installed application about a lot about ZUSA. They do really have about partners from Netherlands. I'm not sure, but yeah, they follow. And what would you add? From the point of view of museum workers. We don't always meet, oh, you are so resilient, but from Western partners we always get that we are really impressed, you are super people. And in Poland, for example, in Germany, museum managers, after stories we tell, they come to us and say, oh, we won't do that. And when there is a choice, to save your to protect your collection, save your collection or a child, so we chose collection. But and one country who shared our experience, they say, oh, we would also do that as you did, and it was Denmark. Of course, they understand and they and sympathize, and when they hear a lot and they're really surprised when we say, oh no, just a mix that or another reasons. But about recovery and about with the difference between overcoming results and recovery. So about protecting of cultural heritage, no, it's hard to talk about recovery. Yeah, we should win first. But if to talk about recovery in museum sphere, that museum managers have adapted very fast. And sometimes we had a museum conference in New York, and there were many scholarships, and in Slavyansk it was hard for people to join Zoom or Khtirka and Kharkiv, but they were surprised. And they were surprised when I was in the supermarket during blackout, because there was light only there. But for us it's normal, and we have adapted to that. About recovery in museum sphere, that's about soft skills, because museum managers, especially relocated, they adapt very fast, and because they don't have collection, but they adapt very fast because they relocated to Lviv, to Kiev, and they gather their own communities. IDPs here, for example, about exhibitions, and for example about Luhansk Museum. The collection was lost twice, and when and the director was called just evacuate. No, I can't, because there were tanks. We saved people from that. We evacuated them, and of course, because people are our main resource. And now relocated museum managers, they provide mobile exhibitions, and of course volunteers and families from IDPs families, and they bring their own things, and just in this way they found different exhibitions, and also. And they show these elements in Switzerland and in other countries. And when we evacuate, we take the most precious things for example, toy cock and Slaviansk ceramics and some examples of that. All the things are given to the museum, and such collections will be created, and even without space and without and also so and horizontal connections save and help us to develop. But the most important for such museums, for example, about National Museum, they don't have anything to do something dynamically, and now we focus at relocated museum managers as they are proactive. But they do believe, of course, that the native land will come back, and they will come back to work. And in Pokrovsk it was really hard. It was 14 kilometers, and you are just shouting like take your child and go to safe place, but they can't because they have prepared a collection and exhibitions, and they want to work. And also the question is how to work with the communities, and how to back to communities which were under occupation. But unfortunately, it's a great chance through such obstacles. But it's the first in our we don't have people in our museums, and we have time to think about new narratives and new exhibitions. And what I hear, it's a kind of really painful development, and when you see when you have another view of another mental recovery. And let's talk about success, formal and with like senseful. How do you see that? You don't like the word success? Maybe effectiveness, efficiency? Well, now we have learned how to combine operative tasks, and of course we would be glad not to look for boxes in 2025, but now we have also changed the focus to strategic objectives. But about our success, about quantity and quality, is that we save people, and that people continue working for such low salary, and they still work, and they believe in their work, and also about quality, that we have communities. About quantity, we have a lot of exhibitions, inter-museum exhibitions. So we have two common exhibitions with different museums, and that's our quantity result. When I started in 2019, it's just budget institution, and they really are afraid to apply for some, and people. And people now we have then more than 200 applications, and they aren't afraid to take part in different programs. Okay, let me talk about success, something personal maybe, because it's not only about something inner that can be measured, something good, or about our organization is something good or something bad. But I agree that people are important. But if you have some process and people suffer, like in Ukraine we have full-scale invasion, so mental health is important first to preserve first of all, and then all other procedures may be followed. because if you don't save our people, then there is no reason to continue. And about stabilizers, Ukrainian Cultural Fund, we see that a lot of governmental organs, and we see that different challenge to apply if to apply to state organization or to civil organization. And we understand that fund can support anyone, and of course we have statistics, but we don't have such things that we will support only that organization or another. And now we have created conditions which are accessible and affordable for everyone, and that's a kind of success. Oksana, what about success, formal and sensible? Formal, that's about good days with all KPI preserved, with everything, like about 78 pages of report. That's about formal. It's about formal success that we have achieved, but I don't feel happiness from that because sometimes when we achieve such results, you don't have any power, time, and any wish just to enjoy this beautiful result in that super nice report. But there is another success. When this report is just in process, and like for example when we are preparing an event, or we started open call, or we have mutual understanding inside our team, or we have some consultations with some consortiums, and we have achieved some common idea, and to have such event as we have today, and that's success, because we have emotions, we have a result. You can't physically touch it, but you get a lot of emotions, and and that's a small triumph that I have done that, I have achieved that, and such kind of success is the best for me. Yeah, that's about the which has sense, and that which hard just to put it in physical way. But formal success should also be, and I understand that everybody has the best teams that do their best to have formal everything for formal success, and also I wish you to have such informal success in each stage of our projects. Well, maybe it's about one point that we have heard today for a lot of times about people, that it's really vital to support and to invest, and of course it's written in our project such result. But about formal results of success, and it's measured like in quantity. But I would like also to highlight on the sense, the content, that we have several levels. The first is support of people, that they can work and stay, and of course the support of their mental health. That the second aspect is opportunity to work and to create projects, and the third aspect is cooperation, international cooperation with partners. In our consortiums we have such element. We don't have people. We have people who don't have partners, but but we help to find to talk about find the way how to talk about priorities and how to collaborate, and for sure each stage has their own data, their own measurements KPI, and but for me it's important also that we have such chance uh, of how many organizations apply and how many organizations have this request, and that's also important element of a good result. Apart from everything mentioned, we together with partners have an element like kind of topic element that each stage has their own topic which connected with some development of some solving some problems. For example, one of elements it's working with with communities, reintegration of veterans, and keeping such connections, and also it's also important to to create such communities, and for us it's also not only to support but also to identify some topics from social needs, some projects from social needs, and even mutual thinking and encouraging organizations to develop such projects, programs, which they can help to to keep such connections, and that's really a long-term view. And one more point is about strategic thinking. And to my mind, it's really hard point to think strategically, but for us, project itself is important, and of course, we look more further than the project, and also we see. We see stages, and we develop the policy how to follow these stages of the project. And this experience to we need to also to transfer to knowledge which we can share and to present in Ukrainian and of course international level. Yeah, thanks a lot. It's really inspiring discussion, and now lunch is waiting for us, and we will talk there. Yes, thank you. 1 minute, and I will let you go. I know that you're starving. That's about me, but I think you're also the same. So just short summary from the first part of the day and from that panel discussion. That's about space and environment, and I think that you feel the difference between and who. For everyone who have filled spaces and who cover spaces, and thanks also to everybody who is present online, and I'm sure that our space is also there. Our online stream is off, and colleagues who are offline, we leave us just go for lunch and come back, and it's important for us to stay here, and in 1:35 we are coming back. In 35 minutes we come back, because we will have a workshop, and we would be really grateful if a lot of people, the most of people, could join our workshop and now enjoy your meal, and we will continue later. And one more thing, and just And so you see a QR code here and downstairs, and that's feedback. And we would really grateful if you could just complete this feedback, almost of the most of you, and we really appreciate your opinion. There won't be any standard questions, so it just will 2-3 minutes or during your lunch or wherever you want, but I really ask you just to do this quiz. Thank you.